Drugémon, The Long Road to Recovery, Chapter 9. The shadow 2 weeks had passed since the heart-wrenching reunion in the alley, 2 weeks that felt like a lifetime. Ash was a ghost perched on a rooftop, a gaunt silhouette against the neon-lit chemical smog of Vermilion City. Unshaven, his eyes hollowed out by a lack of sleep, he wore a dark hooded jacket that helped him blend into the urban decay. He looked less like a Pokémon trainer and more like a vigilante, a man haunted by a singular, all-consuming purpose. Through a pair of binoculars he watched the alley below. His gaze was fixed on Pikachu. His friend, his partner, was a bundle of frantic, paranoid energy, digging through a dumpster with a desperate ferocity. It found a half-eaten, discarded sandwich and devoured it ravenously, without pause. It was thinner than ever, its once vibrant yellow fur now patchy and dull, its movements jerky and unpredictable. The creature in the alley was a ghost of a different sort, a phantom of the Pikachu that Ash had known and loved. This was Ash's new life. He didn't train, he didn't battle, he didn't dream of badges or championships. He followed, he watched. He was Pikachu's shadow, a silent, unseen guardian his friend didn't know was there. By day, he worked odd jobs on the docks, earning enough cash for a cheap room and meager rations. By night, he kept vigil, his world shrinking to the few city blocks that the feral Pikachu now called its territory. He had a small, worn backpack with him, containing a bottle of water, a threadbare blanket, and some high-quality Pokémon food he couldn't really afford. He never got close enough to offer it. The last time he had tried, just a few days after their disastrous reunion, Pikachu had sparked at him, a weak but venomous display of hostility, and fled, seeing not a helping hand, but the approach of a threat. From Pikachu's perspective, the world was a terrifying labyrinth of shadows and threats. Every sudden sound was a predator, every dark corner held a monster. It was driven by a singular, gnawing hunger that overshadowed even the need for food, the craving for the crystal. The memory of the drug, of the power and the warmth and the blissful absence of fear, had become a twisted fantasy of a lost paradise, a heaven it was desperate to reclaim. It caught a scent on the acrid night air, a chemical tang that was both familiar and foreign. It wasn't the crystal, but it was close, a cousin in the family of poisons. It was the smell of other chemical-based Pokémon enhancers. Every instinct in its twitching, malnourished body screamed at it to find the source. The trail, a tantalizing promise in the stinking air, led it towards a darkened, dilapidated warehouse near the docks. From within, it could hear the guttural grunts of exertion and the wet, brutal clash of bodies. An illegal fight club, and where there was fighting, there were often performance enhancers, a shadow economy of desperation and addiction. From his perch on the rooftop opposite, Ash saw Pikachu stiffen, its nose twitching. He watched as it abandoned its search for food and began to move with a new, disturbing purpose towards the warehouse. Ash's face tightened. He knew what happened in places like that. He pulled the hood of his jacket low over his face and, with the silent, swift movements of a man who has learned to live in the shadows, descended into the streets below. The warehouse was a pit of grim, frenetic activity. A makeshift ring, stained with sweat and something that looked disturbingly like blood, was set up in the center, illuminated by a single, swinging industrial lamp that cast long, dancing shadows. A crowd of shady trainers and hollow-eyed gamblers shouted and shoved, their faces ugly masks of greed and bloodlust as they placed their bets. In the ring, a golem and a machoke were locked in a brutal, no-holds-barred fight. It was less a Pokémon battle and more a dogfight, a desperate, ugly struggle for survival. Both Pokémon were scarred and bleeding, their movements sluggish but still vicious. Pikachu slipped in through a broken window, a small, unnoticed shadow, and scrambled up into the rafters. From its perch in the darkness above the ring, it scanned the area, its eyes ignoring the fight, instead hunting through the crowd. It was looking for a dealer. Its gaze landed on a man in a long, greasy coat who was discreetly exchanging small, glowing vials for wads of cash with a trainer whose ratata was twitching and vibrating as if it were about to explode. Pikachu's body trembled with a feverish anticipation. It had found what it was looking for. At the back of the crowd, Ash slipped in, his hood pulled low to hide his face. He ignored the brutal spectacle in the ring, his eyes scanning the cavernous warehouse for any sign of his lost friend. A cold dread crept up his spine. This was exactly the kind of place where a small, desperate, and reckless Pokémon could get itself killed. The Machoke in the ring finally collapsed, its body twitching, unable to continue. The crowd roared its approval. The owner, a brutish thug with a cruel face, recalled the defeated Pokémon with a curse and stormed away. The winner, a cold-eyed man known only as the captain, recalled his golem with an impassive expression. The captain was the organizer of this sordid operation, and he ran it with an iron fist. His signature Pokémon, a massive, battle-scarred Kingler, stood by his side like a crustacean executioner. Pikachu saw its chance. The dealer in the long coat was distracted, counting his earnings from the last fight. With a speed born of pure, unadulterated need, Pikachu scurried down a support beam from the rafters, a silent, yellow blur that zipped across the floor, and snatched a vial from the dealer's coat pocket. The dealer shouted in surprise and anger, pointing a trembling finger at the retreating blur. "Hey, that rat stole my merchandise." The captain turned, his expression hardening into a mask of cold fury. He hated thieves. Theft was unpredictable, and it was bad for business. "Seal the exits," he commanded, his voice low and dangerous. "No one leaves. Find that rat." With a deafening clang, heavy metal doors slammed shut, plunging the warehouse into a state of lockdown. The mood of the crowd shifted instantly, their boisterous fun turning into a nervous, fearful murmuring. Ash, hidden at the back of the crowd, felt his blood run cold. They were trapped, and Pikachu was the target. Pikachu, clutching the precious vial, tried to scramble back to the broken window it had entered through, but its escape route had been blocked by two of the captain's thugs. It was cornered. It turned to face the approaching men, its body trembling, but its eyes were fixed on the vial. It tried to uncork the small bottle with its teeth, its mind consumed by the desperate need for the contents. The captain walked forward, his men parting before him like a wave. He gestured to his Kingler. The Pokémon was enormous, its larger claw scarred and blackened from countless battles. It clicked its massive pincer, the sound echoing with a terrifying finality in the tense silence. "A common street rat," the captain sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. "Stealing from my associates. An infestation that needs to be cleansed." Kingler vice grip. The Kingler advanced on Pikachu, its massive claw open, ready to crush the small, trembling Pokémon. Pikachu was too weak, too consumed by its craving to even mount a proper defense. It was a death sentence. Suddenly, a smoke bomb clattered onto the concrete floor, erupting in a thick, choking cloud of grey smoke. The crowd panicked, coughing and stumbling, their shouts turning to cries of confusion. Through the smoke, a figure emerged, Ash. He moved with a swift, silent purpose he hadn't shown in months. He was not a trainer. He was a rescuer. He snatched the vial from Pikachu's grasp, and in the same motion, shoved the terrified and furious Pokémon into a ventilation duct near the floor. "Go," he whispered, his voice a harsh command. Now, Pikachu, confused and enraged at having its prize stolen, hesitated for a split second, but the sight of the monstrous Kingler emerging from the smoke, its eyes glowing with malevolent intent, sent it scrambling into the darkness of the vent to safety. The smoke began to clear. Ash stood alone, facing the captain and his Kingler. With a deliberate, defiant motion, he crushed the vial under his heel, the glowing green liquid seeping uselessly into the grimy concrete floor. The captain looked at Ash, then at the empty vent, then at the crushed vial. He put the pieces together. His anger was cold, absolute, and terrifying. "You," he said, his voice barely a whisper, "you're with the rat. You cost me a customer, and you helped a thief escape. You're going to pay for both." Ash said nothing. He had no Pokémon to defend him. He had only his wits and the few meager tools in his backpack. He pulled out a small, powerful flashlight and shone it directly into the Kingler's sensitive, stalk-mounted eyes. The giant crab recoiled with a hiss of pain, momentarily blinded. Ash used the opportunity not to fight, but to flee. He vaulted over a stack of crates and ran for his life, the enraged shouts of the captain and his thugs echoing behind him. He had made a powerful new enemy. He had saved Pikachu for a moment, but in doing so, he had brought the full wrath of Vermilion's criminal underworld down on himself. He ran through the labyrinthine alleys of the port, alone and hunted. Miles away, in another part of the city, Pikachu emerged from the vent, shivering, not with cold, but with the unfulfilled, agonizing craving of its addiction. It was safe, but it was not saved.